The shadow of the Tsar, a darkness that fell not just upon Russia, but upon the very soul of Ivan IV. His name, a whispered curse, a chilling echo in the hallowed halls of the Kremlin. They called him Ivan the Terrible, a title earned not in battlefield glory, but in the chilling symphony of screams and the chilling silence of shattered lives. His reign, a tapestry woven with threads of iron and blood, stained crimson by the countless victims of his wrath. His paranoia, a venomous serpent coiled around his heart, constricting his every breath, poisoning his very thoughts. He saw enemies everywhere, lurking in the shadows, whispering treason in the wind. His own reflection, a distorted mockery, a constant reminder of his own mortality, a chilling prophecy of his impending doom. Each passing day was a descent into madness, a slow, agonizing spiral into the abyss of his own making. The opulent chambers of the Alexandrov Palace, once symbols of his power, now served as gilded cages, trapping him in a labyrinth of his own making. His once sharp mind now clouded by suspicion, by the phantoms of his own creation. This is not a tale of a king's valiant struggles, nor of a hero's final stand. This is a descent, a harrowing journey into the heart of madness, a chilling portrait of a man consumed by his own demons. A man who, even in death, would cast a long and dreadful shadow over the land he ruled with such terrifying brutality. The end, when it came, was as horrific and inevitable as the reign that preceded it. Prepare yourselves, for in the coming days we shall witness the final agonizing moments of Ivan the Terrible, a king consumed by his own paranoia, his own terrifying vision of the world, a vision that ultimately destroyed him. The silence after the storm will be as deafening as the storm itself. The Alexandrov Palace, a gilded cage, its grandeur a cruel mockery of the terror within. Its walls, once symbols of Ivan's absolute power, now felt like suffocating stone, pressing down upon him, a physical manifestation of his growing paranoia. Isolation was his constant companion here, a chilling silence broken only by the echoes of his own tormented whispers. The vast, echoing halls seemed to mock his dwindling strength, amplifying his every fear, every tremor of his failing body. The cold, damp air seeped into his bones, a constant reminder of the encroaching winter, a chilling metaphor for the decay that consumed him. The opulent furnishings, once sources of pride, now felt like suffocating reminders of his mortality, of his dwindling power. Each ornate detail, each meticulously crafted piece seemed to leer at him, judging his decline, whispering of his inevitable end. Even the light, filtering through the high arched windows, seemed to cast long, menacing shadows, transforming the familiar into the sinister. This was not a sanctuary. This was a tomb awaiting its occupant. The palace, once a bastion of power, had become a prison of his own mind. The very stones seemed to exude a chilling dread, a palpable sense of foreboding that clung to him like a shroud. He was trapped, not just within the palace walls, but within the confines of his own tormented psyche, a prisoner of his own making. The weight of his paranoia, the chilling reality of his vulnerability, pressed down on him, crushing the last vestiges of his once formidable strength. His final days would unfold within these walls, a grim tableau of a king's descent into madness and death. The cold grip of the palace mirrored the icy terror that seized his heart. The first cracks appeared subtly, almost imperceptible at first, like hairline fractures in a once impregnable fortress. Sleep, once a fleeting respite, became a battlefield, a torment of restless nights and haunted dreams. His once sharp mind, the engine of his tyranny, began to falter, its gears grinding in the machinery of his decaying body. The iron grip of his will loosened, replaced by fits of inexplicable rage, spasms of uncontrolled fury that shattered the fragile peace of his opulent surroundings. His eyes, once blazing with ruthless ambition, now held a haunted quality, reflecting the turmoil within. The mirror, once a reflection of power, now showed him a stranger, a decaying husk of his former self. His body, once a vessel of strength, began to betray him, its resilience waning under the relentless assault of his own inner demons. The once powerful Tsar found himself increasingly irritable, his temper a volatile storm ready to erupt at the slightest provocation. His words, once sharp commands, now tumbled out in fragmented sentences, punctuated by unsettling pauses, revealing the growing chasm in his mental state. The once ironclad certainty of his convictions wavered, replaced by a chilling uncertainty, a gnawing doubt that gnawed at the foundations of his sanity. The whispers of his paranoia grew louder, more insistent, weaving themselves into the fabric of his reality. These were not merely the ramblings of a decaying mind, but the prelude to a final, terrifying act, a descent into the abyss that would claim him completely. The cracks, once subtle, grew into fissures, threatening to shatter the very foundation of his being. The descent had begun. His sleep, once a fleeting refuge, became a terrifying descent into a nightmarish landscape of his own making. Dreams, once fleeting images, now held him captive, their vivid horrors clinging to him even in the waking hours. He dreamt of betrayal, of daggers gleaming in the shadows, of familiar faces twisted into grotesque masks of treachery. Each nightmare was a symbolic replay of his deepest fears, a terrifying premonition of his impending doom. The loss of power, the ultimate nightmare, haunted his sleep. He saw himself stripped bare, his crown snatched away, his authority reduced to ashes. These were not mere dreams, they were projections of his deepest anxieties, amplified by his failing health and his ever-growing paranoia. The faces of his enemies, real and imagined, danced in his tormented visions, their whispers echoing in the dark recesses of his mind. His own reflection, a constant reminder of his mortality, became a monstrous figure in his dreams, a symbol of his decaying power and his impending death. The once regal image transformed into a grotesque parody of royalty, a horrifying reminder of his vulnerability. These were not random visions but chilling premonitions, symbolic representations of the disintegration of his world, the collapse of his reign, and the inevitable end that awaited him. The dreams, stark and terrifying, were the harbingers of his final agonizing days. Each night he plunged deeper into the abyss of his own fears, closer to the horrifying reality that awaited him upon waking. The air within the Alexandrov palace, already thick with the weight of dread, was further saturated with the pungent aroma of juniper. Its bitter scent, a constant presence in the Tsar's final days, served a dual purpose. Officially, it was a medicinal attempt to alleviate his suffering, a desperate measure to soothe his ravaged body. The smoke, thick and acrid, filled the chambers, a futile attempt to mask the stench of decay and death that clung to the air. But the juniper held a deeper, more sinister significance. In the superstitious world of the 16th century, juniper was associated with both death and purification, a potent symbol of transition between life and the afterlife. Its smoke, swirling through the opulent halls, served as a grim reminder of Ivan's failing health, a constant, olfactory reminder of his mortality. The scent, once perhaps soothing, now became a harbinger of the inevitable, a suffocating blanket of impending doom. The burning juniper, a paradoxical attempt at healing, served instead as a ritualistic preparation for his death, a symbolic cleansing before his final journey. It was a somber preparation, a macabre ceremony performed in the heart of his opulent prison. The acrid smoke, a constant companion in his final days, mirrored the bitterness of his end, a fittingly pungent shroud for a reign of terror. The juniper's scent, once perhaps vaguely medicinal, now hung heavy with the foreboding of death, a constant, suffocating reminder of his impending demise. The bitter fragrance permeated every corner of the palace, a chilling testament to the Tsar's final, agonizing hours. The whispers began subtly, insidious tendrils of doubt weaving their way into the fabric of his reality. They started as mere suspicions, fleeting anxieties easily dismissed, but soon escalated into unshakable convictions, a relentless torrent of imagined betrayals. Ivan, once the master of his realm, now found himself a prisoner of his own mind, trapped in a labyrinth of paranoia. He saw enemies everywhere, lurking in the shadows, plotting his downfall. The loyal advisors who once served him faithfully now appeared as conspirators, their every word a veiled threat, their every action a calculated maneuver against him. Even the familiar faces of his family became suspect, their affection now interpreted as a deceptive facade, masking their true intentions. His paranoia manifested in violent outbursts, fueled by his unshakable belief in imminent treachery. He accused his closest confidants of treason, his suspicions escalating into fits of rage that left those around him trembling in fear. The once opulent palace, a symbol of his power, now felt like a suffocating cage, every corner a potential hiding place for his enemies. The echoes of his accusations, sharp and venomous, became a constant reminder of the madness that consumed him. His world, once defined by absolute power, was now a landscape of perpetual fear, populated by imagined enemies and fueled by his own self-destructive paranoia. The whispers, once barely audible, now roared in his ears, a cacophony of imagined treachery that would ultimately consume him. The violence erupted without warning, unpredictable storms of rage that swept through the palace, leaving a trail of destruction and terror in their wake. These were not calculated acts of cruelty, but rather spontaneous explosions of fury, born from a mind fractured by paranoia and disease. His once iron grip on power now manifested as a terrifying, unpredictable force, striking out at those closest to him. One moment, he would be engaged in conversation, seemingly lucid. The next, he would erupt in a frenzy of violence, his eyes blazing with a terrifying intensity. His victims were often those who had once served him with unwavering loyalty, their past devotion offering no protection from his sudden, brutal wrath. The blows fell indiscriminately, fueled by a paranoia that saw enemies even in the most trusted faces. The destruction was not limited to physical violence. His rage extended to the sacred objects within the palace, icons and religious artifacts smashed to pieces in his fits of fury, a reflection of his crumbling faith and his increasingly unstable mental state. The screams that echoed through the halls were not just cries of pain, but also the chilling testament to the utter disintegration of his reason. His once powerful presence, now a terrifying spectacle of uncontrolled rage, left those around him paralyzed with fear. These violent outbursts, unpredictable and brutal, were not merely acts of aggression, but a visceral manifestation of his rapidly deteriorating mind, a horrifying prelude to his final, agonizing end. Each eruption was a brutal step toward the abyss, a stark, terrifying demonstration of his unraveling. The Tsar's crown, a symbol of absolute power and unwavering authority, became a chilling reflection of Ivan's decaying mental state. It was no longer simply a regal ornament, it was a tangible manifestation of his dwindling control, a physical representation of his desperate struggle to retain his grip on power. His obsession with the crown grew increasingly erratic, a symptom of his escalating paranoia. He saw it not as a symbol of his rightful reign, but as a coveted prize, constantly threatened by imagined enemies, by the whispers of betrayal that echoed in his tormented mind. The crown, once a source of pride and strength, now became a source of anxiety, a constant reminder of his vulnerability. He clung to it, not out of pride, but out of a desperate fear of losing everything. His demands to have the crown nailed to his skull, a grotesque image of desperation, spoke volumes about his deteriorating state. It was an act of desperate self-preservation, a futile attempt to prevent the crown, and by extension his power, from being stolen from him, even in death. The crown, once a symbol of his authority over his realm, became a morbid testament to his loss of control, a symbol of his descent into madness and the fragility of his grasp on reality. His fear wasn't just of losing the crown, it was a fear of losing everything he had built, everything he had conquered, all crumbling under the weight of his paranoia. The Tsar's body, once a vessel of seemingly boundless energy, betrayed him in the final days. The scalding sulfur baths, intended as a cure, instead served as a grim premonition, burning his already pock-marked flesh, a testament to the relentless decay consuming him. The leeches, applied to his swollen legs in a desperate attempt to alleviate the suffering, only served to highlight the insidious nature of his failing health. The blood they drew, a dark crimson, seemed to mirror the ominous tide of his approaching end. His fits of agony were not merely physical, they were expressions of a mind unraveling, a body succumbing to a relentless assault from both within and without. Did poison play its silent, insidious role? Was it a slow, agonizing demise wrought by some pre-existing condition finally claiming its victim? Or was it a combination of both, a perfect storm of physical and mental deterioration that brought the mighty Tsar to his knees? The questions remain, shrouded in the mists of history, unanswered whispers in the echoing halls of the Kremlin. But the evidence is clear. A once powerful ruler was brought low by the relentless assault of an unknown enemy, a sinister combination of decay and disease that ultimately proved far more potent than any earthly army. His suffering was a gruesome spectacle, a horrifying descent that mirrored the decay of his reign. Each agonizing twitch, each pained groan, served as a macabre reminder of his mortality, his power reduced to mere whispers. The final game of chess wasn't just a game, it was a chilling ritual, a macabre enactment of Ivan's own life. His final, desperate struggle for control played out on a checkered battlefield. The atmosphere in the chess room was thick with dread, the silence punctuated only by the Tsar's ragged breaths and the ominous mutterings of doom prophecies. Each move of the pieces seemed to mirror the slow, agonizing decline of his reign, each strategic maneuver a desperate attempt to regain a power that was slipping from his grasp. His opponent, Bogdan Belsky, must have felt the weight of the impending doom, the chilling aura of death hanging heavy in the air. The game itself became a grotesque metaphor, the black and white squares representing the stark dichotomy of life and death, the pieces themselves, pawns and kings, symbolic of the shifting power dynamics of his crumbling empire. His opponent was not merely a fellow player, but a silent witness to the Tsar's final, desperate struggle. The seizure came as a sudden, brutal interruption, a violent end to the game, and to Ivan's life. The crimson froth that leaked from his nostrils painted a horrifying picture of his demise. The black pawn clenched between his teeth, a grotesque final piece in the macabre game of his life, underscored the grim irony of his death. It was a fitting end, a final, symbolic act in a life defined by power, paranoia, and ultimately, death. The chessboard, once a stage for calculated moves, became his tomb, the final scene in a tragedy of epic proportions. His final breath was a checkmate, not by his opponent, but by the relentless forces of decay and disease. The rats, scurrying unseen in the shadows of the opulent palace, became chilling symbols of decay and the encroaching darkness that consumed Ivan. Their presence, a constant, unsettling undercurrent, reflected the crumbling of his power, the slow, insidious rot that had set in, not just in his body, but in his empire. They were not merely vermin, they were harbingers of ruin, their presence a constant reminder of the inevitable decline. Their skittering movements, a constant, unsettling soundtrack to the Tsar's final days, echoed the anxieties that gnawed at his mind. They mirrored his own physical deterioration, a relentless decay mirroring the crumbling of his once unshakable authority. Their gnawing, a constant, insidious threat, paralleled the paranoia that consumed him, the imagined betrayals that haunted his every waking moment. The rats, in their relentless pursuit of sustenance, became a grotesque metaphor for the vultures circling, waiting to pick at the carcass of his power. Each squeak and rustle served as a macabre soundtrack to his impending demise, a constant, unsettling reminder of the fragility of life and the inevitability of death. Their presence, omnipresent yet unseen, added to the oppressive atmosphere of dread that permeated the palace, transforming the opulent surroundings into a mausoleum anticipating its final occupant. The rats, in their silent, relentless activity, became a chilling metaphor for the decay that had consumed both the Tsar's body and his empire. A stark reminder of the fleeting nature of power and the inevitability of ruin. They were the silent witnesses to his downfall, their presence a grim foreshadowing of the coming silence. 6 days before the end, the sulfur baths, meant to cleanse, instead seared his already ravaged flesh. The leeches, clinging to his swollen legs, drew forth a dark crimson tide, a grim prelude to the final curtain. 4 days later, fits of rage consumed him, a terrifying spectacle of a mind unraveling. Icons, once revered symbols of faith, were smashed under the weight of his furious hands, their destruction a reflection of the crumbling faith in his own power. He screamed, his voice a tortured rasp that angels had transformed into crows, harbingers of his impending doom. 2 days before his death, a spectral figure, he dragged himself through the echoing halls of the palace, his movements slow, deliberate, his every step a testament to his failing strength. His mind, consumed by paranoia, fixated on the crown, a symbol of his power now twisted into a morbid obsession. He demanded that it be nailed to his skull, a desperate act to prevent any imagined theft, a testament to the fear that had become his constant companion. The final morning dawned, a chilling prelude to the end. He crawled, a broken man, to the chess room, muttering prophecies of doom, a grim acceptance of his fate. Mid-game, his body seized, a final, violent convulsion. Crimson froth leaked from his nostrils, painting a gruesome picture of his demise. He collapsed onto the chessboard, a black pawn clutched between his teeth, a grotesque final piece in the macabre game of his life. The game was over. The Tsar was dead. The crown, a symbol of absolute power, became a physical manifestation of the crushing weight of Ivan's responsibilities. Its golden weight, once a source of pride, transformed into a symbol of his burden, a physical representation of the crushing pressure that bore down on him. The weight of the crown was not merely literal, it was psychological, a constant reminder of the immense power he wielded, the lives he controlled, and the constant threat of betrayal that haunted his every waking moment. Each jewel, once dazzling, now reflected the fractured state of his mind, mirroring the cracks in his own increasingly unstable world. The gold, meant to represent his authority, felt like a suffocating weight, a tangible representation of his paranoia, a constant reminder of his enemies, both real and imagined. The crown, once a symbol of his invincibility, became a constant, suffocating reminder of his mortality. The weight of the crown, both literal and symbolic, contributed significantly to his physical and mental decline. The heavy burden of his responsibilities, compounded by his ever-increasing paranoia, exacerbated his existing ailments. The once powerful Tsar, burdened by the weight of his crown, became a prisoner of his own making, his mind and body consumed by the very power he so desperately sought to retain. The crown, instead of being a symbol of his strength, became a tragic emblem of his downfall. His reign, once characterized by absolute power, ended under the crushing weight of his own paranoia and the symbolic weight of the crown itself. The final days were an agonizing descent into physical torment. His body, once the vessel of a powerful ruler, became a battlefield of pain. Swollen legs, ravaged by an unseen illness, throbbed with a relentless agony. Each movement, once decisive and commanding, became a Herculean effort, a testament to his failing strength. The once vibrant skin, marred by pockmarks, now stretched taut and pale, reflecting the inner turmoil that consumed him. The pain was relentless, a constant companion that intensified with each passing hour. It was not merely physical, it was a reflection of his mental anguish, a horrifying symphony of suffering. His breath, once powerful and commanding, became ragged and shallow, each gasp a desperate struggle for air. The once sharp gaze, piercing and intimidating, clouded over, reflecting the dimming light of his life. Feverish chills racked his body, alternating with sweats that left him weak and trembling. His body, once the epitome of strength and power, betrayed him, becoming a vessel of decay. The agony was not only physical, it was an emotional torment, mirroring the turmoil in his mind, a stark reminder of the approaching end. The suffering was a reflection of his broken spirit, his power waning, his body failing. His final hours were a testament to the price of power, a gruesome spectacle of pain and despair, a chilling reminder of the fragility of even the most powerful human being. The final game began, a macabre reflection of his life. Across the chessboard, Bogdan Belsky, his opponent, watched, a silent witness to the unfolding tragedy. Ivan, his eyes flickering with a mixture of paranoia and fading consciousness, made his moves, each one slower, more labored than the last. The game, a metaphor for his life, was nearing its end. Then, a sudden seizure. His body convulsed, a grotesque display of his failing strength. A crimson froth bubbled from his nostrils, a horrifying eruption of blood and agony. His eyes, once filled with the cold fire of authority, rolled back, revealing the stark terror within. The pieces on the board scattered, mirroring the chaos within his own failing body. His breath hitched, a desperate gasp for air, then silence. The once powerful Tsar lay sprawled across the chessboard, a black pawn clenched between his teeth, a morbid final piece in the game of his life. His body, once the symbol of absolute power, was now inert, lifeless, a stark contrast to the ruthless ruler he once was. The scene was a horrifying tableau, a macabre end for a man whose life was defined by violence and paranoia. His death, as dramatic and brutal as his life, left a chilling legacy, a testament to the destructive power of unchecked authority and a mind consumed by its own darkness. The game was over. The Tsar was dead. Ivan's paranoia was not merely a personal affliction, it was the driving force behind many of his most brutal decisions. His reign, marked by periods of both brilliance and barbarity, was indelibly shaped by his escalating fears and suspicions. His violent outbursts, his purges, his cruelties all stemmed from a mind consumed by the unshakable belief that enemies lurked everywhere. His paranoia fueled his tyranny, creating a climate of fear that stifled dissent and solidified his absolute power. The constant threat of betrayal, real or imagined, warped his judgment, leading to acts of unspeakable cruelty. His suspicion extended to everyone around him, turning his court into a viper's nest of intrigue and fear, where trust was a luxury no one could afford. This atmosphere of suspicion and dread permeated every aspect of his rule, shaping his policies, his interactions with his subjects, and his legacy. His paranoia didn't just affect his personal life, it poisoned his reign, transforming Russia into a land ruled by terror. The legacy of Ivan the Terrible is not merely one of power and expansion, it's a chilling testament to the destructive potential of unchecked paranoia, a reminder of how a ruler's mental state can shape the fate of an entire nation. The seeds of his downfall were sown in the fertile ground of his own disturbed mind, a tragic reminder of the fragility of power and the devastating consequences of unchecked paranoia. The dramatic irony of Ivan's death is almost unbearable. The man who had wielded absolute power, who had commanded armies and instilled terror in the hearts of millions, met his end in a spasm of agony, a pawn clutched in his lifeless grip. His final moments were a stark contrast to the image he cultivated throughout his reign, a powerful Tsar, feared and obeyed. Instead, he was a broken man, his body ravaged by illness, his mind consumed by paranoia. The scene is a macabre masterpiece of contrast. The opulent setting of the Alexandrov Palace, a testament to his power and wealth, served only as a stark backdrop to his humiliating demise. The chess game, a symbol of strategy and control, became the stage for his final, desperate struggle. His death, a violent seizure, was a brutal end to a life marked by violence. The once feared Tsar, now reduced to a helpless, convulsing figure, leaves a lasting image of vulnerability and mortality. The powerful ruler, the symbol of absolute authority, was ultimately subdued not by enemies, but by the ravages of his own failing body and tormented mind. His death, a gruesome spectacle, serves as a chilling reminder of the ephemeral nature of power and the inevitable triumph of death. The king is dead. Long live the king, or perhaps, long live the consequences. The silence that followed Ivan's death was heavy, pregnant with the unspoken consequences of his reign. The whispers in the echoing halls of the Kremlin were no longer of his power, but of his demise, a chilling reminder of mortality's inevitable reach. The opulent palace, once a stage for his tyranny, now stood as a mausoleum to his reign of terror. His legacy, however, remained, a dark shadow cast across the land he once ruled. The aftermath of his death was not a period of immediate peace. The turmoil that characterized his reign continued, a testament to the instability he created. The succession was fraught with conflict, the boyars vying for power in the vacuum left by the Tsar's demise. His paranoia, it seemed, had infected the very fabric of his empire, leaving behind a legacy of suspicion and bloodshed. The seeds of chaos he had sown continued to bear bitter fruit long after his death. His story serves as a grim warning. The unchecked exercise of power, fueled by paranoia and fear, leads not to stability but to destruction. The fall of Ivan the Terrible is not simply a historical event. It is a timeless cautionary tale, a chilling reminder of the consequences of unchecked ambition and the corrupting influence of absolute power. The silence after the storm was not peace, but the unsettling quiet of a world still reeling from the tempest of his reign, a world forever altered by the shadow of his madness. Let his memory serve as a somber warning, echoing through the ages.